What does world-class real estate look like to you?
It's about creating relationships,
consistent communication.
Estate agency with a great culture, who care for their people, who care for their clients, who care for their customers, without just looking at the number at the end of the commission check.
I think it's about amazing customer service.
It's about people, not property.
Thank you to Iceberg Digital for sponsoring the podcast and making all this possible.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the World Class Real Estate Podcast. Today we are here face to face in person, first of 3 recordings in Coventry. We said before we enjoy these chats. We think it gets a more authentic and genuine conversation, don't we?
Yeah, you've got to work out whether you're going to look at the camera or look at me on this episode.
Yeah, I know, and this thing I feel like I'm in the way. So if you're watching on video, you can give me some stick if you want.
Yeah. No, we've got great guests lined up. First one on this particular episode is David. David Lindley is the by design, I don't know exact title, I'm going to say managing director.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
Senior
like
figure. And obviously he's got a background of fine and country as well, which we talk about on the episode 2.
Yep.
So we have a really good conversation with David on this one, talking all about the premium end of the market, prime end of the market, what actually dictates that as well. Yeah. And it's a very interesting episode that we're now kind of doing the intro and the outro for, that I think if you are interested in that side of the market.
Or just have aspirations to do it at some point.
Yeah, or shouldn't you?
Yeah.
You know, is it fruitful? Does it work? And other ways of doing it. By design is effectively a bit like the self-employed model of premium as well. So got some good questions. We've got some great answers. It's a really good conversation. Yeah. Should we dive in?
Let's get on.
In a world where estate agents are bombarded by prop tech hype and AI buzzwords, one company is setting the standard: Iceberg Digital, with AI-powered prospecting that uncovers new listings before your competitors, marketing that wins you instructions by putting your brand in front and centre, and a fully integrated CRM that transforms how your team works every day. This is not another tool, it's world-class real estate technology. Stop just doing the basics better and start using software that actually moves the dial in your business. Discover icebergdigital.co.uk today. David, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming down.
Thanks so much for having me here. Really excited.
Yeah, it's going to be a great convo. I know you guys are looking forward to chatting about premium stuff as well, both of your bags, so we can talk about that market. But the first question is always the first question. I'll let this guy ask it.
Yeah, let's get into it. What does world-class real estate look like to you, David?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I love the fact that that's your opening one, because it kind of sets up the rest of the conversation, doesn't it? Yeah. I think what world-class real estate agency looks like to me would be a estate agency that is delivering a really high level of service, customer service, a really high level of property marketing, but then from agents that deliver that at a high fee level, which might be a little bit controversial to a degree, but I actually think it's almost impossible to do the first two without having that high fee level there. I think it's a false economy. So in the last week or so, I think we're probably familiar with Simon Gates. You kind of can't escape his name. Yeah, they invoice me for this, but can't escape his name.
He gets about, doesn't he? He
gets about. But,
you're welcome, Gatesy.
Yeah, yet again. But he released that, like a beta version of his app. Have you seen that? The fee comparison table.
Yeah.
And it's quite a nice way of putting it into perspective how much of a false economy it is to go with an agent that charges. I mean, I did one the other day. It was different between a 1% and 2% fee. And it was something like a difference in the negotiated end selling price of 2%, 3%, something like that, which actually in the thick of a negotiation isn't very much. They had a massive difference to the bottom line of the vendor, whereas all they see is what the agent's getting.
Yeah.
And come to some false assumptions about that. Last thing I would say on that is just because it's my bag, I would say high customer service, high marketing, high fee. I would also say for high value homes, but that's because what I'm interested in. I don't necessarily think that that's exclusive to the high end of the market. I think that charging a high fee for doing the job properly for the customer is good for the customer, but it's also good for the agent, I think, at any price level.
Let's dive in on the premium side of things then. Is it easier to charge a higher fee, percentage-wise, if you're going for a higher value home, do you think?
So it's a good question. Whether it's easier or not, I'm not sure, but there is statistics that show that as the average house price goes up, the average fee percentage goes up, which is kind of principally the reason that I'm so interested in the premium market. Is not because it's posh houses or look nice or whatever. It's just cold, hard facts that it's so lucrative. So Simon Ledbetter does his Voice of the Agent survey every year. And every year there's a graph that kind of looks like this that goes up. And I think that the average fee across the country for your average house price like 200 to 300,000 is about 1.1. When you get over 750,000, it goes up to about 1.4 and then onwards from there. And obviously it's compounded because you've got a higher value property at the same time. Whether that's easier or not, I'm not sure. I do think there's a mindset difference sometimes, perhaps, that those customers are, it's a whole other conversation, but are
used to paying for luxury stuff.
Yeah, and I know it's a broad brushstroke, which isn't fair, but sometimes it'll be the whole cash rich, time poor, and they want someone who is going to do the job properly for them, and they'd rather not scrimp out and instruct a 1% agent, let's just say, who's going to do half the job and is going to stress them out. And there's more on the line for them as well. Like, let's be honest, there's a lot more money swirling about there in the success or failure of that transaction. So I don't know if you do stuff in the high end, don't you, as well? I know you do as well. But
yeah, I think the competition plays a part of that, because I find the more premium or higher end of the market specialists, run-of-the-mill, charge higher fees. And where I am, you know, if you're listing something at, say, 1.5 plus, which is that higher end of the market for my area, home counties, realistically, if I'm going up against any of those agents that deal in that market, minimum expectation is 1.75%.
Yeah.
You know, most of them are 2, 1.8, 1.9, in and around there. Most of them are charging upfront, some sort of marketing upfront price as well on top of that.
Yeah.
And if your competition is there, it's not easier, but it's the client's expecting it. Whereas when if for some reason you get into the lower end market and you're battling out with your Purple Bricks and all of these other kind of dodgy agents, and it becomes a bit of a kind of bum fight for the
100%.
lowest fee.
Yeah.
So I think that plays a part in it. I just think that part of the market have done really well to say, look, this is kind of what normal looks like.
Yes.
But I agree with what you said there about the fee, the price. I also think the volume aspect of it. You're not dealing with 30 instructions a month like a crazy town centre office might be.
Yeah.
So you can kind of almost say no to a lot of stuff, which gives you that ability to give the client that fee level of service ultimately, because you've got less to deal with. And that's very similar to us. It's just we deal in the family market rather than the sort of more primary stuff.
But you're 100% right about that. Like two things. One is coming back to that whole false economy of low fees. I think that the Purple Bricks and the Strikes and all this world have kind of proven that point. Like Strike's not here anymore. I don't know what Purple Bricks are doing. I know they are bought out by Strike, and I've got no idea what this
No one knows.
No one knows.
No, it's just only Simon Gates knows.
Yeah. But it is, even aside from what it means to the end customer, the fact that that company went from being worth over 1 billion English pounds to £1 when it was sold, I don't think is sort of talked about enough. Like that on its own just seems absolutely insane to me. So that maybe to a degree has proven the point that doesn't work. And then coming on to your second point about volume is, I really agree with that. A lot of agents in buy design will intentionally limit the amount of instructions they take on, and they'll vary that from time to time based on circumstance, all the rest of it, so that they don't get overwhelmed by it. And I think that the opposite is also true. You can end up in a situation where you have too many instructions at too low fee levels, and then because overheads keep climbing all the time, you need more resource people to service those clients to some degree or another, so you have to take on more stock, and it's this kind of doom loop of low fees, low service, and down you go as well. I think it's just better off avoided.
You mentioned by design there. We obviously share Lifecycle. We don't share the same one, but we've got Lifecycle. You guys have got Lifecycle. And what I like to have Avocado is actually that having data all around the country that kind of coincides and supports the agents as a bit of a network almost is a similar process, I understand, to potentially how you've got it set up. There's a lot of support mechanisms, and talk us through by design how it looks for the agents that are kind of trading with the brand.
Yeah. On the lifecycle bit, I think lifecycle, I'm not really used to dealing with a lot of CRMs myself, but it does seem like there's a very good community within lifecycle of people that kind of get. What do you use, Martin?
We use Street.
Okay, Street. I think that's probably like those two are sort of held up there as some of the best, aren't they? But there does seem to be a very good community of people that kind of get it. And Mark Burgess is very thought-provoking, and I think you either see his view of the world or you don't, and those that do kind of come together and rally around that. From an agent's point of view in by design, what by design's set up to do is basically give an agent everything they would need to launch, scale, run, one day exit a premium estate agency business. And because we work on exclusive territories, then there is a very, very collaborative culture in the business. Like no one's stepping on each other's toes. They're all building the brand up. They are helping one another. And I think that's more important, especially if someone's come from like an employed role. They might not realize how important it is to have that community around them. And by having the fact that they are not competing with one another, they are just literally collaborating, like pragmatically within life cycle being one thing, but then just asking questions, solving problems together is really important. Do you run avocado on exclusive territories, or how do you? Yeah. So you've got the same thing. That they understand that when they promote the brand in one area, that'll benefit them in turn, and when their neighbour's successful, they'll be more successful as a result.
Yeah. It works quite well on the self-employed game, I think, because our job as kind of the police at the top is to ensure that the standard is high so that your neighbour complements you and doesn't impact you ultimately.
100%.
Yeah. It's very different. Most self-employed, you could have 6 or 7 in the same town, but it kind of helps with that network.
100%. So like yesterday, I spoke to someone in By Design, and we were talking about someone who was interested in joining near her, and she said, no, don't do it. I was like, okay, that's enough for me. And we just wouldn't do it because that's too important to cock up.
They're your partners, aren't they, at the end of the day? If you're building that and you've got one person in one area, your neighbour, your partner, their success leads to your success leads to their success. So that's a really important part of it. Just for me, who doesn't know a great deal about By Design and that sort of process, how does it differ from, you might hate this question or you might quite like it, how does it differ from Fine and Country and what they did when they built that part of the brand? Because they had a premium, but they still have a premium offering, and that was done quite successfily. So what are the differences and the similarities between the two?
No, it's a good question. I'm probably the person to answer that. Before I started By Design, I was the CEO of Fine and Country, so that was sort of my background into it really. And then prior to that was involved with the guild. And Moving Works guild members.
We were guild members. Oh God, we're probably like 09.
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
But like I'm such an anorak for this. I recognise the Moving Works name because of Guild Leadership. I need a hobby or something.
Yeah, but that was when we did the guild stuff, and they had the flyers and the magazine and all that. But and still some parts of that are relevant today. Some parts aren't.
Yeah. So in terms of By Design, so having run that business, I saw the opportunity. I knew what that did well, and also the things that it didn't do well. Not through anyone's fault necessarily, but just almost through like the passage of time, the way technology moves on, and things like that. So to give an example, when I was running Fine and Country, we were bang on about like a referral system. You probably might remember this from the guild sense as well.
Yeah. Doesn't work. No one uses it.
Doesn't work. But that's the thing. And so like, locked in the old school way of thinking, I remember sitting down with Mark Burgess and I said, oh, Mark, could you make us, for Barlow, can you make us a referral system? And he was like, yeah, we could pretty much do anything. So yeah. And then I thought about it and talked to him. I was like, hang on a minute. If we're using Lifecycle, like that is completely redundant. The idea of a person sending people around to one another, that is just ridiculous. Whereas if we're all in one life cycle system together, then we can see, not only does that happen automatically, but we can see the opportunities before another agent does. So when someone goes to view a property or makes a viewing inquiry with somebody in Devon and they happen to live in Northamptonshire, the By Design agent in Northamptonshire gets that notification. So away we go. And it was a lot about moving it forward in terms of the technology of what we do. I mean, one CRM is really important, a lot more online marketing. So in By Design, one of the things we do is we advertise nationally in places like The Times. I left Fine and Country in COVID in 2020, and I tried to like take the opportunity when I was there to drag them out of advertising in the Sunday Times newspaper physical thing. I was like, come on, this is the opportunity. Let's bin this. This is costing a lot of money and ridiculous. No one was having it. I was like, okay, then we can move on then, and we can do things in a more modern way. A lot of people who have taken a By Design license have come from Fine and Country so that they can run their own. They were doing it for somebody else basically, and they would take a By Design license so that they could run their own business, have their own premium estate agency, have their own exclusive territory, and run the business the way they'd wanted it to do. I kind of can't not have a lot of affection for the Fine and Country brand. I kind of grew up with it. But to say something funny on here that I've not really told anyone before is that that feeling isn't necessarily reciprocated.
I wonder why.
To the point where now I had somebody in By Design say, oh, my emails are broken, and you must know what this is like. You're like, oh, okay, guess what, the emails. Turns out they're in a chain with someone in Fine and Country, and Fine and Country blocked every single person in By Design from emailing anybody in Fine and Country. So I'm like, Right. Okay. So that's what we're doing, is it?
Back to that collaboration word.
Yeah. I mean, that's a bit childish, and it's really interesting actually what you said there. The subtlety and the difference. It's, for somebody who's maybe not experienced or doesn't know what they're looking for, they might not recognise the difference that you talked about there between sending a referral and actually alerting the person that needs to be proactive about the opportunity as soon as it happens, because the reactive person doesn't really, a little nibble, it's not really much motivation to actually send it across. To the person, as you mentioned, in Northamptonshire, that's a potential massive fee. They're going to get on that and get all over it. So it's a subtle difference in business, but actually what you said there about and collaboration, that's not quite as subtle, and that's the world that why we do this, why you've travelled to come and see us today, that we're all interested in, is building the industry, helping people get better and trying to promote higher standards.
Yes.
So how does that differ for the people that are in by design from where they've come from, whether it's factory or another business? It is personal development and learning and improvement a big part of what you do.
It is, but less so. I'd probably say it's less so that, like, I always joke with them that I'm nobody's trainer, and that's not what I do. But what our business does is support them with everything that they need to run their own premium estate agency business. And they would do so. We're quite strong on personal branding. Like, I think the personal branding thing is really important, but secondarily to that is the business brand. And I think it's quite a close second, that if you could be the best agent in the world, but if it's just you on your own going out there to £1 million instruction, I think that there needs to be a little bit more weight behind it. So we from the agent's point of view, then the journey that they're on is that they would want to, and people in Biodesign are on different stages on this, depending on how fast they're going, how long they've been doing it, and so on. But it's basically this, is they would have their exclusive territory and they'd be running their premium estate agency business in there, using their own marketing, personal branding, and so on, but all the backup, the network, the size, scale, database, national advertising, international advertising, and so on that Biodesign does. And then what their future looks like is that they are, not all of them, they can choose to, is to recruit self-employed agents of their own. So they become a brokerage within their area, if that makes sense. And then they keep 100% of their fees. We charge a flat fixed license fee per month, and they keep 100% of their fees, and they can do whatever splits they want to with the agents that they recruit. So we've got some licensees with 2 or 3 agents, I should say, in their area. And that's important from a business point of view strategically, because one, for income, they'll charge them a monthly fee, they'll charge them a commission split. 2 is it gives some flexibility around, it sounds daft, but stuff like holidays and things like that. But thirdly is that there is, I did a podcast with a chap called Adam Walker, who is a broker for estate agency businesses. And he's basically saying that from a, lettings is slightly different, but for a sales only estate agency, there's not very much value there at all. Percentage of pipeline is kind of it.
Joking, we talk about it quite a lot.
Yeah, but that valuation multiple differs massively when you almost convert your business into being a brokerage, because then there is asset value in there, and that's what Biodesign licensees are creating, is like a brokerage within the network, if that makes sense. So they have income, and then they have actual asset value at the end of the day as well. So that's the journey that they're on, and yeah, it's going all right.
What about the marketing side of it? And I want to talk about more that end of the market economically as well at some point. But from a marketing point of view, do you find, is the client expecting different levels? Are they expecting to see a different estate agency type of marketing to the run-of-the-mill corporate, for example? Is that expectation there, or is it the agent that's saying, because it's a higher value property and we're charging a higher fee, that we will do additional marketing, expert marketing?
So sometimes I think we get like really almost too close to the woods to see the trees, or whatever that expression is. I always butcher it. But for a lot of people that, and maybe even more so in that end of the market, maybe they've not moved home in like 10, 15 years, something like that. They're not obviously paying anywhere near as much attention to all this stuff as we are. And they think, oh, who did I buy my home through? Can't even remember. And they'll think, oh, well, I've got £1 million, £2 million plus home. Then they'll probably have a short list of agencies in the back of their head, like your kind of typical household names, your Savills, your Knight Franks, and stuff like that. And they think, oh, well, I should probably instruct them and take whatever they say as almost verbatim. I know I'm generalizing a lot, but this is sort of the trend.
Yep.
Also, the trend is that all of the top 10 brands, nationally speaking, for the premium end of the market are all losing market share, all of them. So Strat Parker, Savills, Knight Frank, Fine & Country, Hamptons, I think. There's maybe one or two, maybe one that isn't, and they're in London because they're acquiring other businesses, so it's kind of inorganic growth. And I believe the reason underneath that is because there is almost like an attitude or an approach that they take, that they'll list it, they'll do things, they haven't really changed very much in the way they're doing, or their property marketing or so on, and they actually a lot of the time don't charge particularly high fees. And a very, very good market for anyone to buy design, but anyone wanting to attack that premium market is to be the second agent in when those agencies haven't sold it.
Yeah.
There is a complete underwhelm of service and marketing that they've experienced, and maybe haven't got the success they want to. They see what a cheaper fee gets them, and actually think, say, well, that was how things were done before, but now let me show you the way the properties can be marketed today. So sometimes it can be the expectation, and the ones that are, especially on social media, will see the levels of property marketing that can be done now, but a lot of them aren't. It's an age thing, a generational thing. So it'd actually be quite a nice, not surprise, but a nice instruction to show them what can be done if you're going really proactively at that market.
So what does that look like in terms of marketing for the client, practical marketing assets that you think are important in premium marketing now that maybe weren't considered 10, 15 years ago?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and because it kind of changes all the time. And as a brand, we're sort of the opposite of, I'd be quite controlling, to use the word that you used earlier about the brand guidelines and standards and so on, and that's always an ongoing thing.
There's nothing wrong with that.
But the opposite is true when it comes to marketing. I like things that are kind of creative or adventurous or trying new things and how that might work, and some of it works and some of it doesn't. But it moves so quickly. So for example, this week, I had no idea about this. It's just, I saw it and I was like, that's incredible. There was someone in By Design had created, and I'd seen this from like agents in the States and things like that. She'd done what they call like a Netflix style property video. Yeah. And you know, what the hell are you talking about there? And admittedly, it's kind of hard to define, but it is, you know how most property videos now are like a formula. Agent stands outside the house. Hello, I'm X from Y, welcome to Z. And then they go around and have a look at it, and sometimes there's a voiceover and so on. This was so different. There was so much attention that was paid to the editing and the B-roll, and the video started off almost mid-sentence when they're talking about the house and its feel and its flow and so on. It felt like a very, very short sort of documentary or film about the house. Yeah. And so it's a really hard question to answer, like, what does marketing look like? Because it moves on all the time. Mm-hmm. What I will say though is that yes, it's very important, and you know, Mark Burgess would say this is sacrilege, and I'd understand why, but it can quite often be old school stuff as well. So property brochures are, and I was like, oh God, here we go, property brochures. But someone reframed it to me and they said they're just a humongous business card. Yeah. And there's two agents in By Design that have like it's like a joke, but they call it brochure wars, so they're trying to outdo each other with the quality of brochure that they create, go over the top with. And like one of them saw me and gave me one and said, oh yeah, give this to James. Like, okay. But it is a bit of a generational thing as well. So like my dad, as an example, we have a By Design house. It's actually under offer with By Design at the moment. He's on the internet, but he's not on social media. So you think, okay, well, if we're going to reach these people, we have to kind of do a bit of everything. So we've got actually we're going together on Friday this week with other people in By Design to create a sort of not on market letter strategy campaign to reach those people effectively as well. So it is a good question. There is no one silver bullet to it. And I guess the nice thing and the exciting thing is it does change all the time, and it's kind of fun to see that, and fun to be a part of it and to experiment with it as well.
I think it's the personality of the agent now as well, because we're talking personal brand, we're talking self-employed business owners, we're talking more of the brokerage type model. I think the skill set of the agent and what they want to portray themselves as will dictate that. I think the house is actually less the influence now. Obviously, if you're listing different price points or he's got different characteristics, you're going to change things slightly. But depending on what the agent wants to be seen and known as with their local public or their local clients, their future clients, that has a big impact. Some people are just incredible with twilight photos and things like that, and that's their stamp, isn't it? It's like their digital business card. That's what they're known for. Some people are amazing at those quick fire reels with voiceovers, you know, come walk through and it just pops on Instagram and it's amazing. Seen some of the documentary style things. I'm seeing a lot of people with video edits now where the house is the foundations and then it just builds the house. The roof comes on top. And one of the guys at Avocado the other day had something that was built, pre 1900s, and they kind of started it with like that sort of beigey looking like film set with a cart horse going across the high street, and then boom, all of a sudden it was like really modern era. I was like, wow, these things are it's amazing to see, because when you just said there, the standard agent now, which presenter, spin round, sometimes you've got to think 5 years ago, like that was
cutting edge.
Yeah. It was
It's
rocket.
even
That was
5 years ago. It's like 2 years ago. It's not like
Yeah.
You're all right. This is moving on fast. And you mentioned the States. We're getting, because of social media, we get inspiration from all around the world now. It's really easy to take that and say to a good videographer, right, this is the type of thing I want to create. Let's go with it. And if you've got a good videographer, I think premium homes, one of the marketing assets, video is just absolute must. We still see premium homes on Rightmove with some okay photos but no video, and I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned about picking up secondhand and stock. We'll talk about that a little bit in a moment. But the video and the game there is just rising, week to week, month to month, because we get inspiration from agents who charge a lot more money than we do in different parts of the world.
Yeah.
In terms of that second agent stock, do you find that competition quite often at the premium end of the market will use valuation to entice a client to use them more so than the mid range of the market, or is that always a problem? At the higher end, it just becomes more of a problem because there's more money, there's less buyers, and when it goes wrong, it can go wrong more drastically. It works on percentages, doesn't it? Do you think that agents who are trying to break into the premium market, or agents who do it badly, are overvaluing a lot more than you would see in a typical mid market?
I think the honest answer is that I don't know, but a couple of things that I can sort of hang my hat on is that, firstly, nationally, I annoy people on the internet with spamming them with content and stuff like that. But one of the ones to do is good old Gatesy provides us with a premium market report every month.
Yeah.
And he just provided one for January. And generally speaking, the market above 750, stock levels slightly higher, sales slightly higher. It's all fine, really. Price reductions are through the roof. And what that's caused by exactly, I don't know whether that's necessarily new agents coming in that are overvaluing. We'll come on to that in a minute. I do think there is a bit of a readjustment in a lot of sellers' minds that they've reached a high tide mark in prices, and they're like, no, that's what it is today. I'm like, it might not be. It might be, but it might not be. But certainly the market stats would say that, generally speaking, it's not. What I do see a lot of is I do a lot of premium market reports on a local level and use 20 CI stats to see that. And you'll see this happens quite a lot, where you see an agent that will explode in their market share, and you go, whoa, bloody hell, look at that. And then you look at their actual performance and it's almost all withdrawn. And you think, well, what the hell was that? And I think it is where someone's come in with a bang, done something. I don't know. I never know what it is. All I can see is the results, the stats. I don't know the story. Or they've come in and done something. They might have a real slick person that's come in and promised the earth, or they've gone crazy with prices or something like that, and it just hasn't worked. So I don't know. You can see from the stats now that I think that when homes are quite keenly priced and comes down to the motivation of the seller, they're selling really well. But there is also another chunk of the market which is just stagnant, because there's a gap between the seller's expectation and the reality of the market.
You go to Sunny's houses, we're up north, fairly low value probably compared to some parts of the country, but we can go to a house that are disagreeable with the owner of 100, 200, 250 grand that you're on the market, and then they're chasing the market down. There's a couple of houses I drove past on the way here that I went out to a couple of weeks at the Melbourne market with them raised, and full well it'll be 100, maybe 200 grand, which is 10-20% over where I think it sits in the market. When you are on the market at those higher price points and you have to make those chunky reductions, it really hurts, but it also has quite often minimal effect, in my opinion. You mentioned second-hand stock, you mentioned some letters and what have you. Are you happy to share any strategies for how you think agents should be going about getting second-hand stock? And that's at any level of the market, really.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think you guys must speak to agents all the time, and I think everyone's looking for the silver bullet, which doesn't really exist. And the only silver bullet is the consistency. So one tactical example that I'll give, which probably won't work this year, is stuff with kind of novelty AI moves on. There was someone at By Design, and she produced Christmas cards to send around, and she did it for people's houses, and then she'd AI'd like a Christmas scene onto their house, onto a Christmas card, and sent it through their door. And she's wanted instructions off the back of that. Now it'd be easy to say like, oh, well, there you go, that's what you need to do. But that obviously isn't the whole story. She'd been prospecting them before, they'd seen her on socials, seen her success, seen everything that came before it, that a Christmas card with a novelty photo on the front. I say novelty, it's not like crap. It looked really nice, but the novelty idea of that being something new and different, that wouldn't do it on its own, but it is the whole backdrop of being very consistent, very professional about what you do. And that's so when Simon led Better and Unchained and that, they talk about marketing, he said something to me once which really clarified it for me. He said there's two types of marketing. There's brand building and there's sales activation, he called it. And you have to just assign what you're doing into one of those two buckets. So the Christmas card is probably sales activation, but all the rest, it wouldn't work without all the rest of brand building that had gone on before that she'd been doing in that area for a long time. But also it can just be silly things like, but just making it a habit. And so what I mean by that is, yes, there's stuff that you can do and there's automated ways of doing things, sending letters, all the rest of it. But Sunlight by Design, they have just in their car like a stack of almost like postcards, just nicely designed postcards, not very much information on the front and blank on the back. And she would, when she saw a house, sometimes not even on the market, that was particularly caught her eye, she would write a note on the back of this and post it through the letterbox, and that was it. Maybe something comes fit, maybe it doesn't. But there's that stat that comes back to the amount of ads we get bombarded with in online sense, and we get 1.4 letters through the post a day, I think it is. Mm-hmm. So to receive something like that does stand out. So yeah, I don't think there's anything, there's no silver bullet to it, but it is a good market to go after.
I work with a marketing agency that specialises in lead generation, and Matt was actually on this podcast. I managed to get him into our office and had a face-to-face conversation with him, which we'll be releasing. And one of the things that he talks about is the trust timer. And effectively the way he looks at it is, if you're a business or you're an individual, every client that you're trying to touch base with or connect with, they have like a trust timer with you. So if you put the postcard through, the Christmas card through, they see you in the Facebook group, the trust timer just builds a little bit further around the clock. And the more of those timers you can have out there with these clients, the quicker the trust builds. And we call it avocado omnipresence, which is kind of what you're alluding to there with the kind of novelty Christmas card idea. All of the things led up to it, and that just triggered it over the edge.
Yeah.
But I think that for estate agents in marketing is such a powerful thing to think about, because we're so knee-jerk on sometimes we need this, we need that, or we were talking about referrals earlier. Sometimes when you're really busy, a referral's a pain in the arse. That's the truth of it. If you're flat out and a referral comes in and it's like not the perfect house, but then when you're in desperation phase because you need valuations, a referral comes in, you'll take anything. And it kind of, that could be in the same year that you have the same thought about exactly the same address, or a different thought about the same address. But that omnipresence, what that does is it just builds that trust time, it builds that snowball, and then the sales activation, or as I call it, the kind of the traffic part of the lead, or the funnel I should say, pushes the lead in the right direction. And I think that's a big thing for estate agents. Consistency is key, but what is the plan? What's the strategy? What's the blueprint? What's the path that you're going on? Whether it's you want to work central London market, or you want to work home counties premium listings, or you want to work, the different markets that you guys work. I think you just have to do all of the things all of the time to the target audience.
And there's something to be said for the doing of it as well. Like the consistency builds the, I think when a homeowner sees you doing something consistently for a long period of time, it could be the perfect thing for them, it could not be, but at least they can appreciate that you can be disciplined enough to be consistent with something, and then therefore you have a level of professionalism to it. But so I'll give you an example. There's an agent by design was prospecting for a property, took it on, it was a very expensive property, and it'd been on the market before, hadn't sold. They listed it. They spent a lot of money on staging and styling the property and the property's marketing and its videography and photography and so on. And the crazy thing was that their fee was well over double what the previous agent was that hadn't sold it. They sold it to someone who had actually seen it a long, long time before. It's probably been on the market for a long time with the previous agent, but hadn't seen it staged or styled. And it was only when they'd seen it marketed like that it changed their mind. And the agent went on to earn it was well over 6-figure fee from secondhand stock. He's almost now created a problem because everyone in that area now sees that as their new high tide mark for pricing. And so he's busy, but expectations are set as well. But that just goes to show the power of targeting that stock from agents that haven't made that level of investment, dare I say.
I wanted to quickly, sorry, Mark, I wanted to quickly ask a question just where it comes to the forefront. Traditional estate agents or chain estate agents, high street estate agents, what's your take on the agents that add a premium brand to the same brand versus being who they are? So where I am, for example, we've got Bridges. I think they've got 10 offices. They're a good independent, deal with a certain value of the market, very much home sort of level market. But then they've got Bridges Platinum. And then we've also got I think one called Prestige, which is a different one. And then we've got a really good agent in David Cliff, local, hyper-local agent. But then they have Noir, which is their posh one, if you like. And it's the same, it's just blackboards. What's your take on those? Is that a way that you would suggest those independent agents would push into that market? Or does it get confusing because you are two different brands effectively, but you're not?
Before I ask, what's your take on it with how it's gone locally? I'm genuine. It's not a loaded question.
Well, we don't have Avocado Platinum.
Okay, so that's your answer to that. Well answered. Yeah, fair enough.
And it's a very expensive fruit.
That's a very good point as well. So I kind of get it, but I think I actually think it's a hard way of doing it and can potentially be disruptive. So I think the reason I say it's a hard way of doing it is because I think quite a lot of the time, unless there is something properly differentiated about it, then homeowners feel like they're paying for the same chocolate bar and a slightly more expensive wrapper. It's a bit of a crap analogy, but like that's the feeling, I think, if they can sort of see through it. And there is psychologically or strategically a reason that the same company that owns Volkswagen owns Porsche and owns Lamborghini, but you don't have a Volkswagen Prestige, you have a Porsche or you have a Lamborghini, and it's all the same company. It costs them a lot of money to run the different brands. I'm not saying that it can't work, and I think there's some advantages to it that can be complementary, and there's a market for that. But I think it does make it harder to get the point across. The other thing where it might potentially be damaging is if you sort of smudge the brand around too much and not be known for what you do. So one of the things I think that's really strong about Avocado is how clear you are about your target customer. And then when you start to move what your target customer is, then your original target customer is somewhat confused. Mm-hmm. And a confused mind never buys. Like, am I Avocado or am I not? And I don't know what the difference is. It can be quite a good way of, especially when it's like existing business, of convincing a homeowner that you maybe dealt with before, that knows you, likes you, trusts you, to instruct you, because you can offer some additional bells and whistles and maybe even a higher fee to sort of satisfy that. But what it maybe misses is, so in that sense, it can be sort of brought out on evaluation and could be potentially quite compelling in those circumstances, because you can offer more than what you would do just as I just use Bridges. I don't know Bridges, but Bridges is an example. But what it's unlikely to do is ever generate its own market awareness and then inbound inquiries as a result. Like I suspect that in the Bridges case is something where they go out to a property that's of a certain value, their Bridges Prestige or whatever it is you said it was called. Whereas if it was something completely different and it was building a brand that was specifically for that market, then it would generate its own awareness. And I've just seen that evolution happen, really, because I had more time in it in Fine & Country, where it was brought from being a sub-brand to the fore and then a separate business altogether. Whereas to the point is, I've some of my really closest friends are in Fine & Country, and what they say is the perfect situation is where sometimes a client will invite both their brands out to the same valuation. Yeah, no, it's
a difficult one. It is a difficult one.
So that's what we do.
Yeah, I know. I had a look.
So
collection, right?
Yeah, so we have our collection brand, and a lot of the stuff that you said there about some of the problems and some of the challenges are exactly that for our business. It can be quite difficult if you're going to houses at a certain price point. Do you put them one way or the other? And sometimes the house matters or the client matters. The difficulty with us, and we've talked about it a lot because we used to be part of the complete agent program, and they talk about stretching the brand or splitting the brand, or just focusing on one premium brand. For us, we went through a process over COVID of rebranding, and we wanted to make a deliberate play for the top end of the market that we felt was done poorly in our area. And it was super successful, and we've earned some for our area, enormous fees off the back of it.
I think you've got some lovely listings on
Yeah,
it. It's really nice.
yeah. So and we do it well. I think I'm biased, obviously, but we do it well, and it is a step above our core offering. But what we were always really conscious of is we didn't want to just play in that market and lose the business that we've got in our existing market for a business that's been going for, at the time, 22 years. So, and a woman and I, who I run the business alongside, we have this debate a lot. And last year, when we set our business goals, we said, right, we're going to go and do that. And if you'd have asked me at this time last year, I'd have probably said, if I was starting again, I'd just do a premium agency. But what happened is we had a lot.
Do you mean, sorry, Mark, do you mean you would do just and not do the volume agency, or do you mean you would do it separately, or what do you mean?
So if you'd have asked me this time last year, I'd have said, if I was opening a new business, in where are we, February 2025, I'd have said I'll just open a premium agency, I'd just deal in that market.
Okay.
However, what then transpired is we got a lot of listings, but some of them struggled to sell, and what became really obvious is in our area, that premium part of the market could play a part, but it was never going to be the majority of the business because, the area's evolved, prices have jumped, people have built a lot of big houses in particular, but we're not in Manchester, we're not, in Cheshire or anywhere like that, and those sort of more premium markets around us. It wasn't sustainable for a business on our side just to do that. So actually, what I've come around to, and people will have their opinion on it or otherwise, is that for our business, it works. And in our area, it works. But it depends, I think, where you operate. And that's why I love having these conversations, because when it's your own business, you can make those decisions. And, it's you live by the sword, you die by the sword. But for us, it really works. The collection brand is going really well. It is a higher offering than the core brand, but the core brand is still a better offering than our competition at that level.
I would imagine it feeds you as well. The higher brand feeds the core brand with the upsizers and things like that as well.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And on the flip side, I think it also means that it probably penalises us in that we don't get some of what we would describe as the bread and butter, but I'm also not that bothered about that. I'd rather deal in mid to high market now and deal with what, in my opinion, is a better client than dealing in low volume, low fee stuff at the lower end of the market.
But you are right. That complementary nature of it is true, and I've seen that quite a lot. And funnily enough, it's even with like lettings, you'll see it. Yeah. So where you have your landlord, kind of by virtue of the fact they own more than one house, are typically higher net worth individuals. And by speaking to them in that context as well, there's also the lettings opportunity that comes back around again. So that's, by design, can be that additional ground for a company that wants to be in that market too, really easily, because of those reasons. And like you said as well, Ian, you'll quite often almost build chains within it as well. So you get more bites of the cherry to go through. It can be lucrative.
I think with us, it's hard because we work in a 5 to 750 grand market. That's the bread and butter. Yeah. So what is premium? Yeah. What is prime? It's over 1.5 million, I see as the premium market. Because
what's your opinion, David? Sorry.
Just where I am, you can get a decent estate, 5-bed detached house with a double garage for 1.25 million, and it's a lovely house, and it's 1.25 million.
What are you laughing at?
I'm just laughing at that.
But you're sharing a driveway, and your neighbour's bringing your bins in on a Wednesday. But that's the fact of where I am. So what is prime? What is premium? It's very location.
Yeah, it is location.
100%. Yeah. A couple of quick bits on that. So the way that we view it in By Design, which is a little bit come back to the complete agent, and those three guys are awesome, but is the way that I think Ian sort of runs his business is quite similar in the sense that it's not necessarily a price thing. It's a unique thing. So we've got like really quaint, weird little cottages at sort of £400,000 that are really cool, up to £5-6 million and everything in between. So it's not necessarily on price. Yeah. But on the price thing, 1 in 45 homes in the UK is priced £1 million or above, and that's come down a bit. It used to be 1 in 40, and prices come down a little bit, so that's actually affected that, but it's still a higher number than maybe most people think. And the other thing is that if you just said the upper quartile, and what that means statistically speaking is anything over 500 in that sense. So you have, everyone has different interpretations of this, but you have like upper quartile, prime, and super prime, and even I get confused with what people class as what, and it kind of comes back
super prime.
Yeah, super duper ultra prime. But that market above 500,000 is worth, and this comes back to that Voice of the Asian survey I mentioned earlier, that market there is worth 58% of all of the fees in a state agency in total in the market. So that's the market that you're in there in with that 5 to 750, especially and onwards from there. And it gets more and more lucrative per property as you go up there. But that's you say what is premium. I guess it depends on first your area and then what you're actually classifying yourself as an agency, and whether or not the price point is everything to you or not.
No, it's an interesting topic. And just lastly, before we wrap up, just on the economics, we've touched on it a little bit over the last couple of episodes. It'd be interesting to get your insight, because I would imagine certain influencers outside of the property market financially have more of an impact in the market that the by design agents operate in. We've seen, where I am, for example, there is a really prime part of the Wentworth estate, and we saw when the Ukraine war happened, that had a huge impact like on the prices. The £10 million houses became £7 million houses literally overnight. And then we've seen Trumponomics happen, which has a bit of an impact to the shares. Bitcoin and cryptos, kind of halved in the last 12 months, and that's hit a lot of people, more maybe London-based, I would imagine. Do you see those influencers hit your market probably harder than maybe they do my market, or does it not have the same impact?
Yeah, it's a good point. I think like the global stuff, to use a technical term, probably has more of an impact at that end of the market. Certainly, like we've seen in the last year or so, more American clients come over looking to buy because they don't like what's going on there for whatever reason. I think London is definitely accentuated. So I was chatting to somebody yesterday who's a good friend of mine, works in the London market, and he says it's hit the bottom. In his opinion, he feels like it's hit the bottom, but he said that in recent, there was a client that brought a property for, I think, something like broad brush strokes. They bought it for 3 million and they've just agreed to sell for it on 2. And he's now acting much more as a buyer agent than he is as a selling agent, because that's actually where the money is. He's been instructed by clients saying, go buy. And that's why he thinks it's hit the bottom, is because all these clients are saying, right now, do it. Yeah. So, and maybe that's a self-fulfilling prophecy, maybe not. What I will say though is that, yeah, there are the macroeconomic global political factors to it. A lot of the time, kind of the market that we deal with is successful people's homes, and most businesses are national businesses of that kind as well, so they're more interested in what's happening on a national level maybe than a global level. And that's why things like last year, the last 3 or 4 months of last year was a bit shit really, because you had all the lead up to the budget, and then the budget, which was a bit of a wet weekend, and then it was straight to Christmas, and that's the kind of stuff that has more of an impact on our market than what's going on in Venezuela or something like that. That's not great, but it doesn't really matter. And what we've seen, I don't know about your business as well, but what we've seen so far this year is a lot more activity earlier on in the market than we'd be expecting, of people that have been putting off decisions now saying, right, we're going to get on with it. And even I think today's the first time I've seen the sun this year. Look at that. What the hell is that orange thing?
Yes, nice, wasn't it? Yeah.
But even despite that unbelievably crap weather we've had so many people that want to come to market, our problem has now been is trying to get photography and videography booked in while the weather's been so gloomy. So globally, maybe that's more London. Nationally, I think is where it affects the premium market, I would say. Yeah.
No, it's a good summary. It makes sense. And it's a question I think we'll keep looking at this year because of what's going on everywhere. And it's interesting what you say about America. I've got a friend of mine that moved to America about 10 years ago, and they sold their property in Sunningdale at the time. And then he kind of always gives me a little bit of stick on kind of what's happened with the property market in that time and what's happened with his place in LA. But what he also highlights is the money that he now has in his bank account in America is just worth more than what the same money would have been in England because of how international inflation has gone. I don't know if you've been to America recently, but it's fucking expensive. And that plays a part in it as well. Is, it's the currency exchange and the inflation level globally has a bit of an impact. But it's always insightful. It's always interesting. Really enjoyed it. Thank you for coming on. And if we'll put some contact details for you, obviously, in the show notes. If people want to learn a little bit more about by design, just contact with you on LinkedIn or whatever, is that the best place?
Yeah, I spam people relentlessly on social. So if you have missed me, you've done pretty well.
Yeah. And you have done recently, actually, I will plug that you did do recently for a couple of the avocado agents, a really good localized market overview. I think it was a little video that you did. Yeah. You did one for Natalie in Newbury. It was very insightful. It was really good. So
yeah, they're really interesting. We do those all the time. And I think it's sort of, it's just quite an interesting thing to see what's going on in the premium market in terms of its value, but also what the competitors are doing or what they're not doing sometimes as well.
As the case may be.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thanks for the invite, guys.
Thanks for coming on.
Great. Thanks.
A massive thank you once again to David Lindley from By Design for joining us. A chat I really enjoyed, Ian, having played in that market and having aspirations to do more and grow that part of the business. It was really interesting to hear his take on what makes a good premium agent and whether agents should be playing in that market. What was your sort of key takeaway?
I just like the fact that when you were asking questions for where you're fishing for a silver bullet, that we go back to what we talk about with really good high level people on this episode. There isn't a silver bullet. Consistency, community, culture, people, we talk about those same things, and I think that's a really nice way for us to almost look at normal, online, self-employed, traditional, and then the prime, and it's kind of the same thing. You have to do all of the stuff really well all of the time to be really good. That's the kind of crunch line. So enjoyed that message. Very interesting to hear his insights from obviously where he was previously, how he sees that kind of prime world, going forward, talking about economically impacts as well. I always thought that end of the market would probably be impacted a little bit more globally, but not as much as I thought, to be fair.
Yeah, it was the national stuff, and that's what we saw in our part of the business as well. And that once that budget was out of the way, we did a couple of deals post-budget before Christmas at the high end of the market. I've done a few more now as well. So it was definitely that budget really stifled the market for us at the higher end last year. But what I was really interested in, and something that I really share his philosophy on, is at the higher end of the market, sometimes you do have to, sometimes some of the old, what you might consider old-fashioned stuff, sometimes it still works because those homeowners in those higher value houses maybe are of a certain age. So I really like the fact that he dipped into the traditional but also the modern way of doing it. And I also really liked the conversation that we had in terms of how quickly video can change, and you talked about the Netflix style documentary, didn't he? So I'm going to get him to send me that, and I'll be
I've seen a few actually. I've seen a few of those popping up, those more Netflix documentary, sit down, back on landscape as well, YouTube friendly type stuff. I've seen a few more of those popping up. It was an interesting topic of conversation around brand as well, obviously, which is relevant. I knew, obviously, when I asked the question, I was kind of...
He'd done his homework as well, he knew.
He knew. But it was interesting to get that take. And again, it goes back to, you got to kind of find your lane, and then if you're going to work with different clientele, it's a bit like, okay, we do sales and we do lettings. Two different messages, two different clientele. It doesn't mean that you can't do it fantastically well for both, in the same way that you do your core market and then you do the kind of more prime market, have great results on both, but you kind of know your target audience, your marketing is geared towards that. And I think that's the bit where it does work, when it's kind of, we're not too sure what we're doing, or it's a bit awkward in the middle. Are we upselling, downselling? Kind of, we don't have anything else to offer. That's where I think the traditional agents kind of mess that little bit of it up, which is why I asked that question, which he put back straight on me, by the way. Part of me was like, well, I'm not going to give you that answer. I want yours first. But I gave a little bit of the game away because everyone knows that anyway. But really good episode, and knows his stuff, right? Knows that end of the market. I mean, if someone wants to get some advice, I would imagine he's a good guy to pick up the phone to. Drop a DM on LinkedIn, because I've met David quite a few times, and he is very open with his knowledge and with his support. He's a genuinely like a good guy in the industry.
He was very honest. I thought, you mentioned that he talked about there not being a silver bullet. He also said, well, actually, that's not my bag, a couple of times when we were talking about core markets. So it was a very honest chat, but very insightful for anybody who is listening and thinking about going into that upper end of the market. So yeah, really, really good conversation. If you have enjoyed today's episode, please share it out on social, reach out to David, Ian, or myself. Thank you very much for listening or watching, and we'll see you again next week.